Is Will Stewart. I am the Executive Director of Stay Work Play New Hampshire, a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to attract and retain more young people here in the Granite State. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for New Hampshire Professionals of Color, which is part of Stay Work Play's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. The DEI series, as we call it, is designed to feature events to foster conversation, enable learning experiences, and push for change. And it is our hope that hearing today's stories of the three professionals of color that we have with us today will help to do just that. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, Bangor Savings Bank, and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, our sponsors for Stay Work Play's DEI series. Without their support, today's event simply would not be possible. And to give a few words on behalf of Dartmouth-Hitchcock, our presenting sponsor of the DEI series, please join me in welcoming Dr. Karine Jervis, Medical Director at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Manchester Ambulatory Surgical Center. Dr. Jervis.
Thank you, Will. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Stay Work Play New Hampshire, for hosting this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. This is an important discussion nationally, but most importantly here locally in New Hampshire and for Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, the largest private employer in the Granite State. In June 2020, Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health formed a task force to evaluate patient and employee perceptions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging across the DAH community. The task force was pleased to learn that many people across the organization are very interested and energized around DEIB issues. There's a broad consensus that living and working in a diverse community and organization is highly desirable. We feel that this is our opportunity for DH to become a leading voice and model for diversity, equity, and social justice throughout our region. The task force has created an initial strategic plan to guide our DEIB and social justice efforts over the next 3 to 5 years, which will evolve as we gain a deeper understanding of the challenges within our community. Dartmouth-Hitchcock's health's focus areas include our people, our patients, our community, our environment, governance and leadership, and data analytics. We are recruiting a dedicated senior level leader to create a new administrative focused exclusively on DIB and development, supported both by the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health and the Geisel School of Medicine at Dartmouth. As we continue to develop and work through our strategic plan, it will be critical that we engage our members of underrepresented communities to better understand our experiences, their experiences, and to partner in order to make meaningful and impactful change. It is our vision and goal to make Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health Northern New England's most diverse and inclusive place to work and receive care. I have been in my role as the Associate Medical Director of Perioperative Services and the Medical Director for the DH Manchester Ambulatory Surgery Center in the community group practice since April of 2020. I have been extremely impressed with the level of organizational and community involvement that Dartmouth-Hitchcock has participated from discussions of health equity and social justice. And to quote our CEO, Dr. Joanne Conroy, diversity and inclusion are not goals. Diverse and inclusive belonging is our goal. Opportunities to hear from our community leaders, as we will today, are so valuable to Dartmouth-Hitchcock, our communities, and our state. We're here today to listen to 3 New Hampshire professionals of color. These key stakeholders are key to helping organizations and businesses learn, grow, develop, and adapt their DEIB policies. We thank you for being here today, and we thank you for being part of the change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jervis, and thank you again to Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, as well as Bangor Savings Bank and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation for your ongoing support of this initiative and to enable conversations like this to take place today. So now, what we're all here for, New Hampshire Professionals of Color. So New Hampshire, I think, is pretty well known as for its business-friendly atmosphere, but what's it like to start and operate a business here as a young person of color? Today, we're going to hear from 3 New Hampshire-based entrepreneurs of color who will share their personal stories and business experiences, including both their challenges and successes here in the Granite State. Today's format will have each of our three presenters share their stories, followed by brief individual Q&As with each presenter. Once all three presenters have shared their stories and answered questions, we're going to close out today's event with a large group discussion at which we encourage you to ask additional questions of our panelists or share your own thoughts on topics brought up during today's presentations. Given the number of people here today, we'd like to ask you to please drop any questions that you might have for our speakers in the chat below, both for their individual Q&A and for the large group discussion afterwards. And then we'll be able to catalog these questions and we can call on you to ask your questions or give your comments directly. So with that, our first speaker today and presenter is Gail Summers. And Gail is the owner of Yasso Jamaican Grill in Keene, which is a restaurant that features authentic Jamaican cuisine as well as some modern fusion of Caribbean American dishes. The restaurant is best known for its feel-good food and casual vibe that captures the essence of a Caribbean island. Before launching this social eatery, or this local eatery, Gail had various positions in finance and sales with major food manufacturing and distribution companies. She also serves on several boards and committees for causes that she is passionate about, including the Keene Racial Justice and Safety Committee and the Monadnock Area Transitional Shelter. Please join me in welcoming Gail Summers.
Thank you, Will, and thank you, Karine and Sarah and the rest of the team for bringing this opportunity to me personally to share my story and to my fellow community peers and friends and families and just in general to the New Hampshire community. So I have a presentation that I will share. I am hoping that from sharing this, not just from me, but from my co-presenters, the other two individuals that will follow, I'm going to learn from them as well, and hopefully learn a little bit from me as I share my story. So I will attempt to share my screen here. Let's see how I do this. Share screen. Share. Let me know if you can see the PowerPoint presentation that I have up.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, slideshow, play from start. All right, so I'm Gail Summers. I am owner and let's say creative cuisine person behind Yasso Jamaican Grill, located in Keene, New Hampshire. Currently, we hire about a total of 8 to 9 people on staff. So I do have a professional team that included in the kitchen that will prepare some of the awesome menus and items that we feature in the restaurant. But a lot of these recipes are mine, they're my mom's really. So this business, while it is a business, it's really heartfelt, and I sometimes get kicked out the kitchen, but I do love being in there and feeling like I have a personal connection to a lot of the recipes that we prepare in the kitchen. I was born and raised in Jamaica, rural Jamaica, so living in Keene and being a little bit remote from a lot of things is still a little bit homely to me. I'm used to being away from the hustle and bustle. I'm mom to 2 boys and 2 4-legged little puppies that I love, and I do apologize for a little bit of barking noise in the background there. But I migrated to the US in the 1990s, primarily lived in the Philadelphia region before coming to New Hampshire. Attended Villanova University in the Philadelphia region. Got an undergrad from Villanova. And later went on to get an executive MBA in food marketing. I've had a great career opportunity to work in all facets of business, from finance to sales and marketing, primarily all for food companies. So there is that connection to the restaurant. And I made my way to New Hampshire in 2013 for a career opportunity. So that's how I got to the area. Coming from the Philadelphia suburbs to remote Keene was a little bit daunting at first. I remember I came up for an interview sort of like a day like this, although it was in February or March, and I was trying to understand why is it like this in February or March. Actually, it was in April, actually. So yeah, I was wondering why was it snowing in April? So it was a little bit daunting at first, but taking that career opportunity, being in the Keene community, I really love it and call it home. My son, especially my younger son, did really well in school, and I do believe it's a great area to raise a family. So in 2019, wow, feel like a while ago, but not so much, right? But coming from a Jamaican family, home cooked meals is a big deal. My mom was the oldest of 12 kids in her family, so she was sort of the cook in her family, and some of that passed on to me. Personally, I'm the kind of person that if I have family or friends over, I head to the kitchen and kind of throw a pot on, like, let me see what I can whip up for you. So that love for food, love for home cooked food is true and dear to me, and a big part of who I am and how I was raised. And over the years, especially living in the Philadelphia area, I did a lot of festivals or, community events where I would go and set up and share my food with the community. So there's this part of me that always wanted to do something like Yes So Jamaican Girl. An opportunity came up in 2019 to start in a really small space that we were leased. Launched the business. It was primarily takeout. I think we had about 4 tables where someone could sit and enjoy a meal. The concept of the restaurant is authentic Jamaican plus a fusion of modern Jamaican. So you'll get something as authentic as Jamaican braised beef oxtail, but then you could get something that's more modern, more American Jamaican. I would say you could get a jerk chicken wrap, you could get a jerk chicken salad, you could get a jerk mac and cheese, which is sort of like a buffalo mac and cheese. So the goal is to still keep that authentic Jamaican, but be modern in the sense that we're fusing different things that will still highlight the rich flavor and the authenticity of a Jamaican cuisine, but making it a little bit more modern. So the space we were in ended up being a 1-year lease, so we had to move. So in 2020, in the midst of the current pandemic that we were in, I was faced with a tough decision, move or literally call it quits, because we needed a new home. The business was received really well by the Keene community. We were doing well revenue-wise, and there was so much more that I still wanted to do with the business that I took the dive and moved into a larger space in 2020. Not very far from the original location, where we were at 149 Main Street, and sort of moved uptown a bit to 45 Main Street. A much larger location, a much nicer location. But I thought, even amidst the challenges that we're in now, and me being very optimistic, that is still the best thing for the business. So we do dine-in, we do takeout, delivery, catering. We're holding our own, but needless to say, because of the COVID pandemic, a lot of the revenues have gone down significantly. But I still feel very optimistic about the business idea. I feel very optimistic about where we're heading. And the goal is to really ride the waves and get through the current challenges and be here when this is all over. Challenges and successes and lessons learned. I'll just go through some of these. I just try to capture the top ones, but if there are any questions or other areas that might come up in the Q&A, I look forward to adding. as an entrepreneur, I think one of the biggest challenges is just putting your dream into reality. So turning that idea from an idea to a reality. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of vulnerability, I think, being willing to dive off the edge of that cliff and really just doing it. So I think once you get over that initial fear of, yay, I'm doing this, then you start feeling better. But the first immediate challenge is always um, turning your idea into that reality. Not to mention, while you're vision boarding and thinking about what you're going to do, the reality is that you're going to be faced with some things that you never thought about, and still being willing to forge down that road to make it a reality. Location and startup, I thought that was one worth calling out. At the time that I was thinking about launching, I looked and looked and looked, and it was very hard to find a location. Not to mention, a lot of small businesses, I'm sure, are starting up from their own personal capital and savings, as I did. So you're trying to balance those two things to get a location that sets you up for success, and balancing the cost of starting up. Another challenge that I thought worth calling out is the natural stabilization and growing pains that will come up. I would say once you get to starting the reality of launching your entrepreneurial dream, then you get to this point where you need to stabilize. And if you're doing well, you're going to hit some growing pains. And it's just being able to go through those. One, acknowledge that they will happen, and two, being able to ride the waves to get through those. So if I switch over to successes and lessons learned, it's sort of, again, mirroring those challenges, right? So go ahead and launch. My mom is a big inspirator for me. And especially growing up, we came from very humble means, but my brother, for example, was one of the first in our generation to go to college, and it was a big financial fet to take on something like that. But my mom always said, just start, right? And of course, she borrows a lot from her faith. She was very spiritual and religious, but it's a lot about starting and not being afraid to start. I'm not saying be reckless, do have a plan, but start and getting started. And a lot of the things you'll figure out along the way. One lesson that I learned is hire professionally. Starting small often means that you're maybe relying on a network of friends and family. And that doesn't always work out. So make sure that you're hiring professionally, get the right help earlier on, and avoid some of the pitfalls that come with relying too much on an informal network. Be nimble and adaptable. And this goes to the stabilization and growing pains. One of the things about starting small, you have a big vision maybe, but based on your startup capital and the resources that you have, you're sort of forced to start small. I have a great appreciation for that because it allows you to grow and fit the puzzle pieces together as you grow. But you always have to remain nimble, especially in today's environment, right? We had to switch to a curbside offering our customers the option to, we technically don't have a curbside, but pull up in your car, give us a call, we'll run the food out to you. Be nimble with my menu choices. Some of the things that I thought would be great ended up not being great hits, and being willing to relook and look again and change and adapt along the way. So those are the things that came top of mind, but hopefully there are some questions, and I'll be happy to expand or add on any of those. So one of the areas I was asked to comment on is what is it like being an entrepreneur of color, and being so in New Hampshire. I think one of the most important things is to build a network local and beyond, and especially being in an area as remote as Keene, where the diversity numbers are very low. It's one good regardless to network locally, and that might be with other Black or Brown business owners or community stakeholders, but it could be people that are not of color as well. But people who you can relate to or who can relate to you. And then looking broader to, I know I've gotten involved in a couple groups beyond Keene that are looking to impact the DEI roadmap here in New Hampshire. So building a network is so important. I feel that one of the challenges that Black business owners have is our network tend to be very small. Naturally so, you know, most people have commonality in their network, someone they went to school with, someone that their kids play with. So when you start looking just on pure numbers, being Black in New Hampshire, that's gonna be low, right? But I think broadening your perspective, being willing to network with anyone that has a common mindset, that's really important. And getting involved in your local community. Coming from a corporate environment, I knew that I wanted to launch a business of my own, but I totally underestimated the community connection that I would feel or the impact that I feel like I could make. So I having a business and because I feel like it gives me so many opportunities to connect locally. One such example is I'm working on a task force with our local YMCA, and they're looking to tackle and grow their DEI lens as well. And that and many other things, be it just being there in the community and being a face in the community for other Black and Brown families is important to me. And lastly, I would say use your business to make a difference in the community and being authentic you, which to me means advocate for issues that are near or dear to your heart. So I'm an immigrant, I'm from Jamaica. There was a group from Peterborough that joined us for dinner a few months ago around Halloween. But as it would turn out, they did an annual trip to a part of Jamaica where there are nurses and doctors, and they did like a free clinic. And I was able to partner with them to build awareness in the community. And I'm hoping to do more of that, where I'm not just running a business in the community, but issues such as immigrant rights or children of color that might be in disadvantaged situations, how my business can be a platform for that. So that's all I have. Hopefully I didn't run over my time, but I'm open for questions.
Well, thank you, Gail. Yeah, maybe we can get a couple of questions in here, and then in the interest of time, we can hear from our other speakers, and then maybe we can circle back at the end, because you did have a number of questions that came in. Maybe I can give this one. Some you already answered, I think, and some kind of combined with others. But Juliana Durant asks, have you been able to continue to build your network during the pandemic? And what are good avenues for meeting people locally to do that?
Thank you. Great question. Fortunately for me, I've actually grown my network, but that comes from organizations that are like the YMCA that are very, that's the wrong word, maybe I shouldn't say very interested, but I think given what happened with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of businesses and organizations are really turning the lens inwards to say, how can I be a better advocate for Black lives and people of color in my community? So one of the ways that my network has grown tremendously is an opportunity to serve on certain boards or task forces that are looking to get a community voice and trying to understand the issues of Black lives in the community. And unfortunately, a lot of what we're doing today is virtually. So we're still doing a lot of virtual connection. I'm hoping that I can do some book readings and virtual music events or stuff like that. So we're stuck to doing a lot of virtual hookups until this thing passes.
Very good. And actually, a question, it's a pretty good one from one of your fellow panelists. Gino Miller asks, what was it like establishing a Caribbean restaurant in an area like New Hampshire? Probably the opposite of the Caribbean up here.
Good question. So I'm really fortunate that I think between Usain Bolt and Bob Marley and all the vacationers that have gone to Jamaica, it's well known. Jamaican food culture and music culture is well known. So I'm going to give credit to the fact that I'm building on the back of that established culture that's out there. But it wasn't hard at all. I love where I live, but I hate that we don't have enough food options. So, hey, I wanted to do something about that, and add to the diversity in the food variety locally. So I'm the only Jamaican restaurant that's around, and I get curious eaters who have never had Jamaican food before, but I also get a lot of these stories I love. It's a lot of people, like someone who honeymoon in Jamaica, and they're telling me, oh, we were in Jamaica and we did. I said, how long was it? And like 30 years ago. Or, or my parents brought up when I was a little child, or, so forth and so on. So it's, I would say it's hard. It's you bringing something different to a community because it matters to you.
Well, on behalf of all of us that eat, thank you for adding to the food scene here in New Hampshire, and for opening your business and for making New Hampshire a better place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, we'll probably have some more questions for you when we circle back here at the end. So stand by. People are curious.
Thank you.
So up next, we have Gino Miller, who was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. Gino is the co-founder and CEO of Study, a Manchester-based career matchmaking platform that screens, trains, and connects top talent of color with companies that are building more diverse and inclusive workforces. Gino has a profound love for scaling companies and solving social problems that improve people's lives. Gino has founded 4 successful startups since the age of 14. Wow. And in his leisure time, you can find him listening to Lil Wayne or Jay-Z, reading a book about Ray Dalio, blogging about the latest topics in tech, or brainstorming with other mission-driven tech founders. Welcome, Gino. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
You're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll try this again. Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be here, and I appreciate everyone for coming by, supporting, the panelists and Stay Work Play, Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and everyone here who's organized the event. I thank you all. Gail, number one, if I had known you were in Keene this entire time, I would have been to your restaurant at least 10 times by now. So it's good to know that it's there. Me coming from the Washington, D.C. area, this is something that I'm not Jamaican myself, but I do, I've been raised essentially on Caribbean food and Caribbean dishes. So, it's a comfort to know that you're in the backyard with us here. But so I just want to talk to you all a bit about, what my journey has been like with regards to coming from an entrepreneurial, I wouldn't I guess, a background, diving into entrepreneurship before I knew it was really entrepreneurship, essentially, and why I started on that track, and also how the heck did I end up in New Hampshire, right? So, I don't have a presentation, so I'll try my best to match up to what Gail set for the standard, but I'll do what I can here. So, again, my name is Gino Miller. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Study. It's SHTUDY, in case anyone didn't catch that. And pretty much what we do is we help companies, specifically Fortune 1000 companies and high growth startups, hire the best Black, Latino, Latina, and Native American tech talent for the workforces. And the way that we do that is first, candidates come to our platform and they take a technical coding assessment just to prove that they can do the things that they say they can do. From there, we train them in soft skills. And then finally, we connect them with a mock interview with one of our recruiters before we put them in touch with one of our hiring partners at a Fortune 1000 company or a startup who is looking to not only find someone who can do the job, but also is committed long-term to improving diversity, equity, and inclusion within their company culture. So, but that's kind of where we are now. It sounds all cool, and it sounds like it's a great solution. But obviously, we start like that. So, myself, again, I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. And it wasn't easy growing up in the area. As thankful as I am to grow up in an area like this, there were a lot of challenges that I faced along the way. And I also feel like those challenges molded me to be I'd like to say a successful entrepreneur at this point in my life at such a young age. Challenges that, a lot of Black kids or Black men and women face in underrepresented areas or city environments. Whether it be drugs or guns or violence or different distractions like that can very easily steer somebody off of their life course, especially if they're at a young age where they've never been exposed to anything else before, right? So with that said, DC is nice because you get to, and I tell people this all the time, but you get to see, white people, Black people, Hispanic or Latino people, and many, many different ethnicities, people from many, many different backgrounds, all in a very concentrated area, and because of that, I think those experiences kind of molded me from a personal perspective to appreciate different cultures a lot more. But I also learned that, it's not far-fetched to see, a junkie or, a rich politician or whatever it may be, all within the same area of each other. So, but long story short, my journey, I got into entrepreneurship when I was 14 years old. I fell in love with the sport of football when I was 9 years old. Entrepreneurship, I got into at age 14. I started a clothing line, which was called Cloud9 Kids. All we did was sell t-shirts. All we did was sell sweatpants and sweatsuits. But the goal of that was really to make money for my family, to support my family financially and help add to, whatever finances that we did have coming in at that time. I was fortunate enough eventually to see that I had a gift for entrepreneurship. That kept me focused and on a narrow path. But I also had a lot of friends who didn't have that luxury of, having something to keep them on a straight and narrow path, if that makes sense. Most of the people who I grew up with were not exposed to entrepreneurship. They did not know how to make money other than the things that were immediately in front of them, which a lot of times were not good for them. So because of that, that really drove my passion to give back through study. So long story short, I ended up earning a football scholarship to play football at the University of New Hampshire. And I was, very thankful and fortunate to earn that. But once I got to the University of New Hampshire, my eyes opened up to all of the opportunities around me at that point. My brain started racing. I actually very vividly remember a scenario where I was walking down Main Street in Durham, New Hampshire, and I was actually like just sitting on the bus stop, and I had like this huge rush to figure out what we had to do to bring this to my friends and family in DC, right? I was actually supposed to go to class, and then I ran back to my dorm room to try to, write down different plans and strategies and things of that sort on how we were going to, get this thing going. So that was, that's a very vivid memory. But long story short, that propelled me on this journey. So we started study. We entered a few business competitions. I met my current co-founder. His name is Vaughan. And ironically, Vaughan is a Black man. He is from New York, and he is an engineer. In New Hampshire, there are not a lot of people who fit that demographic, right? So he was also a very high achiever in his classes. He graduated at the top of his class, but he was having trouble. He was getting job offers, but he was having trouble getting the job that he wanted, if that makes sense. And that got us to thinking like, okay, well, what is the disconnect between, what people who don't fit, Vaughan's demographic or my demographic or any person of color's demographic who aren't necessarily getting the chance to see these opportunities? What's the difference between us and folks who don't identify as the same, And so long story short, we won a few business competitions through the University of New Hampshire, through different universities across the country. We used those funds to move to Palo Alto, California, where I lived out there for maybe about 9 to 10 months, and really just conducted a lot of customer discovery. I spoke with different big tech companies, like hiring managers at Facebook or, recruiters at Google and Amazon, and leaders in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, such as Code 2040, and many, many different organizations in the tech realm to really get an understanding, of where this disconnect was. On the surface, it was very easy before we got there to say, oh, these white folks at these companies don't want us here. That was not the case. And it was a very, very, what's the word? I guess you could say good awakening, I'll just say, to know that. But they didn't want to make the sacrifices that were necessary to get people of color, people coming from diverse backgrounds into their organizations. They knew that they wanted people from diverse backgrounds, but they claimed that they didn't know where to find them. And when they did know where to find them, they didn't know how to screen them. They didn't know how to qualify them. They didn't know how to essentially hire them and really retain them, right? And a lot was their fault, but a lot wasn't their fault. A lot is just how things sort of panned out from a business standpoint. So where we come in is we thought to ourselves, okay, well, we know that people like us dream of working for these companies, but we just don't have an effective way to showcase our skills in a way that actually gets us noticed, right? So that kind of started that track on the study and got us thinking, okay, what if there was a way where companies and job seekers can connect with each other, and they knew that they wanted to work for each other, or they wanted to connect with each other before they felt like they were wasting each other's time, or they, that they really knew what they were getting into. So that's kind of where study comes in. And study, again, is that bridge between companies who are looking to hire top tech talent of color and top tech talent of color who are interested in working at companies who are looking to build more diverse and inclusive workforces. So fast forward to now, this was in 2017, beginning of 2018 when these things happened. And then so fast forward to now, it's been about 3 years later. Actually, I'll even take it back one more step. Apologize for keep jumping around like this, but we actually had to put the company on pause in 2019 after the Palo Alto trip because really things were slow with regards to companies, again, trusting us as Black founders, trusting, us as that credible source to have the top talent in the space. And when we moved to Palo Alto, we were thinking, oh yeah, we can make money pretty quickly. We can stay profitable, sustainable. We can bootstrap and be fine. In a very real light, it was shown to us that we have, just because we don't look like the same people who would be paying us to hire people, we had a little bit more to prove, right? And we could have either hung it up right there, and just called it quits and said, okay, well, everyone who ever needed a tech job or everyone who will need a tech job, sorry, but we can't do this. Or we can say, screw this pretty much and continue pushing forward. So that's what we decided to do. We picked it back up. We continue moving forward. And long story short, now we're doing really, really well. We're in our fundraising round currently. And things are, moving forward. We built a strong team. We've placed multiple candidates at great organizations on a consistent basis. And COVID-19 actually, ironically, has propelled the need for our services. And of course, the unfortunate killing and murder of George Floyd has also propelled the need for our services to help us stay afloat, and not only afloat, but thrive during these times and during these pandemics. Yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell, what our story has been like, and kind of where we're at right now. Moving forward, our goal is to reach nations with this. And yeah, we're based out of Manchester, but by no means do we feel like this can stop in Manchester. And we're actually way beyond Manchester at this point. We have clients in Palo Alto, we have clients in Texas, we even have candidates in Jamaica signing up to our platform, in China signing up to our platform, and this is I feel like what makes sense, but it's just a little bit behind as to it actually being on the market. We get a lot of questions at this point of people say, oh, why didn't I think of this? Or why is this, not already out there? And we have the same question, right? So that's kind of, that's a bit in a nutshell about what we do, where we are, and, the value that we're looking to bring to the marketplace.
Well, thank you, Gino. That is awesome. I've already seen here in the chat, somebody says they have some investors in Utah they'd like to connect you with who might be very interested. So Juliana, maybe you can, Gino, maybe you can reach out to Juliana, maybe throw your contact info in the chat there, and who knows what can happen when with these kind of conversations, convening everyone together. Do have a question here for you. Maria Millette asks, what were the sacrifices that businesses needed to make for people of color to enter their workspaces, and why were they hesitant to do so, in your opinion?
That's a really good question. Everything comes back to money and finances, I'd say, especially just from a business standpoint. And that's, I try to pick my words carefully. I don't fault them necessarily for not, wanting to change everything overnight. And I say, well, let me rephrase that, not changing everything overnight. As much as they want to change everything overnight, it may not happen overnight. And because of that, in order to change, I should say, there are certain resources that need to be in place. I know there are a lot of employee resource groups out there that are forming on a pretty consistent basis. That helps. Also, asking your current employees of color who may be in the organization what their experiences have been like. I think that goes a long way. Also having a clear plan, right? Like, it takes buy-in from the entire team. It can't just be one person on a team who says, oh yeah, let's hire, all of these folks of color into the organization because I think it's cool to do. The entire team and the entire organization has to buy into that in order for it to be effective and in order for it to be sustainable. And it has to come from the top all the way down to the bottom. So the C-level folks in the organization are just as, if not more important, as the folks who, may be more entry level or junior level within the organization. And I feel like that contagious effect really knocks out about 90% of the most prominent issues when it comes to being more attractive to candidates of color who are interested in joining specific organizations. But at the end of the day, nothing beats representation. So, the more people of color, it's chicken and the egg scenario, as everything else. But, the more people of color in the organization were already there, it significantly increases your odds of attracting more people of color into the organization. But I think it has to be very, very intentional, and I think it has to be very, very specific, just like any other department or goal or project or task in the company that needs to change or needs to be addressed or fixed. This has to be up there too, and it has to be a priority. And it also has to be very transparently talked about, and it has to be clear that this is a work in progress. There are going to be bumps and bruises, and frankly, there may be employees who are uncomfortable with it. And that you have to be okay with too. But these are the things that a lot of companies, they would like to change overnight, but a lot of times they just feel like there are too many moving pieces and moving parts to make that happen. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think it did. Have one more question before we get to our final presenter. So actually, Gail, asks, says it's an awesome idea. Gino, what are some of the tweaks that you needed to make to push this forward?
Yeah, well, wow. Yeah, so actually, so the biggest tweak is originally we were going to charge the candidate's parents to pay us to, make money for the platform to keep it going and things of that sort. We felt like we could make a lot more money and actually make a bigger impact by removing all payment barriers to candidates who are looking for jobs, offering it exclusively for free, and then just charging the companies. They have more than enough money to pay for this stuff, so that was our mindset towards it. And from there, $10,000 to, a Fortune 1000 company is not the equivalent of $10,000 to, a parent. And let me rephrase that. We weren't charging them $10,000. We were charging them $100. But it's not the same thing, obviously, and so change that slight shift in the business model really propelled a lot of the success that we're having now. And again, with the increased demand and the need that we have, things of that sort, and the current environment that we're in as a country, that only helped. Yeah, that's really what it is. The companies had the money all along, which is no secret. Now it's just a polite kick in the pants for them to kind of put things into gear a little bit. So that was the biggest tweak, I'd say.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gino. And like I said, for anyone else who has additional questions for both Gino and Gail, we will be opening things up for questions and comments to the whole group, all of our presenters, after our final presenter speaks and answers some questions today. And speaking of, and rounding out our conversation today is Jose Diaz, who is the founder of Spyglass Eyewear, a Laconia-based optical boutique featuring one-on-one curated experiences. Spyglass Eyewear carries its own brand of eyewear and offers convenient telemedicine vision exams. Jose has more than 20 years in the optical industry. He's originally from New York City and started his career working with some of the top eyewear designers in the city. In 2004, he relocated to Boston, opening an eyewear company on Newbury Street. And he learned that creating a memorable and unique experience with a quality product is key to building a brand. After moving to Boston, most weekends were spent in the Lakes region here in New Hampshire. And with a growing family, Jose and his wife decided to move to Guilford in 2016. And in July 2020, Spyglass Eyewear opened its doors in Laconia. And with the downtown redevelopment project already on the way, the opening of the shop was welcomed with open arms. So also welcome to you, Jose.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. A lot of great information out here. So I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was actually born in the Dominican Republic and raised in New York City. New York City to New Hampshire is very, very different. As I'm hearing Gail, one of the biggest changes that I had to go through is like, where do I eat? You mean I have to drive 10 minutes to go get milk? I can't walk down the street and order my food. So it definitely was a small change, to say the least. I have over 20 years experience in the optical industry. In high school, my shop class was optical. Some of my friends had wood shops, some had jewelry making. I had optical. So I've been in this business since the age of 15. So a little over 20 years. We're looking about 25 years plus or minus. And I attended City College in New York City. While I was in college, I started working for a 90-year-old, it's probably older than that now, optical shop. It's an opticians only, no doctors, just optical. Learned quite a bit. After that, I got a job with an eyewear designer. I'm like, okay, this sounds interesting. So they collaborated with their staff and some other designers, and they exclusively sold their product in their shops. They had some other practice that I worked with also had the same concept, designing, manufacturing their own product. Now, like with a lot of different businesses, there's a saturation of optical shops. You can go anywhere and find an optical shop. They all carry the names that we all heard of. So having something that's unique and different, that's your own design and your own manufacturing, was something that I found to be very interesting. I met my wife in New York City. She's originally from Laconia, New Hampshire. She was traveling the world, and I totally put a stop to that because we fell in love, and she decided, now, okay, this is where I'm going to stay. Started visiting New Hampshire. And, I joke with people, I grew up in New York City, and I say, I tell people I didn't see trees until the age of 12. So I come up here and there's trees everywhere. This is beautiful. We then moved up to Boston. I had the opportunity to open up a shop for one of the companies that I was working for, and ran that for 6 years. 2008 came around, and it just turned everything upside down. The economy really, stalled in 2008. I decided to cash in my chips and go into more the medical side of the optical industry. Learned a lot as well, but not my cup of tea. I really missed interacting with people one-on-one, giving them, an experience that was more of a boutique type of experience versus you're the doctor, you're going to need surgery. It was just not for me, my personal experience that I wanted to have with my patients. We decided to build a house here in New Hampshire for the weekends. And every time we left, we were like, we just love it here. Let's just stay. That was about 5 years ago. We decided to stay permanently. And every time I walked in Laconia, I realized that there was no optical shop on Main Street. There was other shops in business districts, business areas, but none on the main drag of Laconia. Now, Laconia, like a lot of places, needed a little bit of redevelopment, a little bit of money to be thrown in there. Luckily, those things are occurring. Now, prior to opening up the shop, I did attempt to open up a shop in Boston, and I also looked at spaces here. And for some reason or another, it just never worked out. The place in Boston, I got outbid. There was the rent, they wanted more. And I'm like, I don't know, that's a little too rich for my blood. Let me pass. You learn from that. It's like, I think I was ready, but I really wasn't, ready to jump in at that stage. Come here, I looked at some locations, wasn't in love with the location. I am going to actually share a screen if possible. Can everybody see that? Let's see. So where are we? Sorry. There we go. Here we are. Okay. All right, here we go. Perfect. All right. So 2020, this is January of 2020, I decide that I am going to take up a space that was just recently vacated. It was right across the street from this project that they've been talking about of redeveloping for a long time. It was just a beautiful theater that needed a lot of work. They finally approved the project to go through. It was right across the street. So, you know, all these opportunities that I was looking to go ahead and go on my own, this is why I waited. This place is perfect. So we decided to go ahead with this optical retail location. And one of the things that I wanted to do to make us different was have my own personal brand. Now it's a private label. And the reason why it's a private label, I partnered up with a company that allows me to provide them styles, color, sizing, and they manufacture it for me. They have plants in Germany and in Japan. If I were to do this on my own, it would be extremely expensive, be way more money than I could expend. So finding that relationship was a big deal for me to make my practice different than everybody else. I also provide a telemedicine service. Because of COVID, if you try to get an exam or an appointment with the doctor, we're talking 2, 3, sometimes 4 months waiting to get an eye exam. With this telemedicine, which is available in all sorts of practices now, you're able to come in, there's a doctor remotely, and we are able to use our devices where it scans your eyes and provides a pretty accurate prescription. So, you know, with having our private label and having that telemedicine did give us a little bit of an edge, you know, opening up. So it gave me a pretty good confidence on what was happening. So we opened our doors in July 2020, right? As soon as the, you know, we were able to start congregating a little bit more. COVID was somewhat going, you know, down, as we know, obviously spiked back up. So everybody's excited to go out and meet people, interact. We were all, you know, at home watching Netflix, probably. Right in the downtown, right in Main Street, downtown Laconia. So, like I was mentioning, the branding, our private label is part of our branding. And the reason that branding for me, and like with any business, it gives us an identity. I wanted to have my community recognize who we are, what we do. It develops a good relationship with our community, our friends, our customers. It gives a value. You know, with branding, I'll be able to grow if I so wish to with the brand, grow slowly. No need to rush. You know, one thing that I did not want to do is be everything at once. You know, I wasn't going to go online and start selling eyeglasses online. You know, everybody can do it. You know, I'm like, no, let me focus on this brand here and be the best I can in my neighborhood, in my community, and then hopefully grow from there. The experience when you come into the shop is something that, you know, it's very common. You know, it's brightly lit. It's an unrushed personal experience when you're in the shop. I do take appointments. There are times where people do walk in. I would say that's 60-40, no appointments, 40% appointments for either a style consultation, I call it, or an exam. But it's unrushed. It's all about the detailing. You walk into the space, there's no loud music playing. You know, we do everything with our 5 senses: smell, look, all of it. And I try to incorporate that. So if you're going to come in here, hopefully you like jazz, because that's probably 50% of the time that's what's playing. Although I do like some, you know, hip hop as well. So it has to all the attention has to be there. It's personalized. The range of prescriptions that I see vary from very, very subtle blue blocking filters to individuals that need prisms in their glasses. So, you know, it has to be personalized for them, but at the same time, feel that they are in a comfortable location. And again, that going back to the branding, it gives us an identity that you won't get just going to your doctor's office, waiting a half hour, and seeing the doctor for an hour. You're out of there in 2 hours. Whereas here, you can take your time, but it's not rushed at the same time. You know, it's a small business community, just like, you know, we were all talking about with the other panelists here. It's a collaborative effort with everyone on the street. They all want myself and I want the same for them to succeed. It says a lot that the community itself is providing these new efforts to grow the street, grow the town of Laconia. There's a lot of potential, and you can see that there's a vibe on the street. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I feel comfortable on the street. I'm from New York City. To walk down the street and get a cup of coffee or things of that nature. There's other businesses that are looking to open, and I felt that me coming aboard to this family of small businesses will give them the saying that, you know, he can do it. I can certainly do it. You know, it's a work in progress. It was a bootstrap business for me. Took no loans out. I just wrote out checks to whoever needed it. I didn't take any salary until sometime last month. So that's, you know, it's the old-fashioned bootstrap. You do have to be ready for that, for those that are looking to do that type of business startup. But there are other options. But I tell you, the response that I got from the community was overwhelming. It was nothing but love, and it's truly appreciative. You can see that it's a very genuine response to me being here. You know, I've been coming up to the Lakes region for many years, so I did have a little bit of a network. But word of mouth goes a long way in small town USA, because everybody knows everybody. There's not even 6 degrees, there's 2 degrees of separation. So with that said, you know, I'm really looking forward to continue to grow the community of Laconia.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Jose. Definitely a welcome addition to Laconia, as several people have mentioned in the comments. They love the new spot, and we certainly wish you all the success. You know, anyone who's opening a business in the middle of a pandemic, you know, my hat's off. So, you know, kudos to you. So we do have a few more minutes left in our time together today, and you'd like to open it up at this point. If anyone has any questions, you know, for Jose, I'm sure he would love to chat with you a little bit, and you know, questions for our other presenters as well. Yeah, Maria's asking, Jose, can you love the telemedicine aspect? She says, can you tell us a little bit more about the tech you use for that?
Sure. It's a device that basically takes images via wavefront technologies. It's basically the same technology that is used for LASIK surgery. The individual looks into the device then scans your eyes, takes a few images. Then those images are then sent out to a medical doctor remotely. They analyze those things. If there's any underlying conditions, the doctor will then request for them to see a live doctor. You know, that's happened a few times. An individual didn't know that they had starting cases of cataracts, for example. So, you know, you should see a doctor for that. Oh, I didn't know that. So, and it's 10-15 minutes in and out. It's very, very accurate. It's something that it's getting better, you know, every month. So I'm pretty confident with it. I've had, I did have a little bit of questions. I'm like, oh, is this going to work? Never had an issue. But yeah, the telemedicine services in general are really the next, you know, what's going to be growing quite rapidly in the future.
Again, any questions, feel free to throw them down in the chat there. Have had somebody asking about, have you been able to, you know, take advantage of the a lot of the programs, financial assistance programs that have come through the federal and state governments? You know, PPP, your paycheck protection programs, rounds 1 and 2, your employee tax retention credits, your EIDLs, State of New Hampshire Main Street programs. Curious to know your experiences with those.
Well, is that meant just for Jose?
I'd say anyone you could answer. I know she was asking actually during yours as well, Gail. So yeah, feel free to tackle it.
Yeah, I'll just chime in real quick. And I did just a second ago post a response in the chat box, but I received a very small grant from the New Hampshire Main Street program and another very small PPP. The challenge, though, is the way how these are calculated. They don't consider or give consideration to a business that's recently launched and yet faces the same struggles, because a lot of the numbers and the way they're calculated are looking for your historic year before or 2 years before income and expenses, and asking you to compare that to what's happening now. So a business like mine, who is fairly new, very, very new before the pandemic, doesn't really have that history. And worse, if you're growing now during the pandemic, as or whether it's by choice or forced to grow. In my case, I moved from a very small space to a much bigger space with a larger overhead, then it's not considered historically, right? So you can't show your needs on paper.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's definitely has its challenges, and they're not perfect programs that are inclusive of all business sizes and shapes, and certainly when they were started, not taken into account. I'm curious for all of our panelists, what advice would you have, each of you, for other young entrepreneurs of color, specifically starting businesses here in New Hampshire? What would you tell them based on your own experiences here?
It's a really good question, Will. Personally, I tell them, I tell them be 100% them and unapologetically them, because they're going to catch the attention of anybody. In any room that they walk into, they're probably going to be one of the few, if not the only one in that room that identifies 100% the same way they identify. And that's okay. I don't think that's necessarily a handicap. I think that because of that, all eyes are always on them, and that gives a platform, whether they ask for it or not. That often gives the ability to establish a platform for themselves. Because of that, like their voice can be 10 times as strong as someone who just kind of blends in. And because of that, I think it's important to hold on to who they are as an individual, because attention is attention. And it could be people, saying snarky comments, and it could be people, saying positive comments. But regardless, I think it's important to stay grounded. I think it's important to stay centered and understand who they are and where they come from. And understand that although that they've moved to a new state, it does not necessarily mean that they have to change who they are. And that's hard to do a lot of times when you're one of the few in a specific area. And I'm just speaking from my personal experience. I feel like that's what I've intentionally held on to. And I think that's, or at least have tried to hold on to as much as I can. And I think that's also what is helping me at this point in my life as well.
Great, Gino, thank you. I definitely agree with that. And, you walk into Yasso and you'll hear reggae music playing, sometimes dancehall, which is a little bit more raunchy. I try to consider the crowd and not make it too out there. But I think that's part of being authentically ourselves. I would just add my advice, especially to young Black person of color, minority that's looking to launch their business, is to grow into your dream. I think too often we have a big dream, and I'm saying dream big, dream as big as you can, but be willing to start small, grow into it. The fact is, given our backgrounds, that given our economic situation, given our social challenges, we're not going to have all the resources that we need for that dream right now. So, and sometimes because you have this big dream and you know you can't quite launch that big dream the way you want it, then it becomes an obstacle or a challenge and you think you can't do it. I would just advise you to start small and give yourself credit first and foremost for starting, and then work on it slowly, build on it, grow into it, and don't be discouraged that you can't launch as big as you know your idea deserves.
Jose, any thoughts on what advice you might give?
Sure. Everybody keeps saying you want to start small, and that's very, very smart. When we dream, we typically dream big, but the reality is that those dreams sometimes cost a lot of money. And you want to just grow. It's better to see things flourish than just instantly, there it is. I'd like to see progress, one step at a time. So, my mantra is slow and steady wins the race. And that really is sort of what I stick to. But having said that, I try to get this off the ground in various states, and I'm 44, I'll be 45 in a few months, since the age of like 25. And there was obstacles where I just couldn't do it for small reasons, but never gave up on that idea of being on my own and doing things on my terms. I find that in today's modern world, you can have things provided to you a lot easier, in the sense that you can Google things. There's platforms available to you. 20, 25 years ago, it's impossible. It was impossible. You have to hire somebody for everything. You need an accountant. You needed, other things. Now you can fully integrate your whole business on your phone, basically. So it is a great time to start a business. I think that having a sense of community and the motivation is really to provide a service to the community that really is going to make your community better. It can't be necessarily a selfish thing, like I need to do this to, so I can retire in a couple of years. It's not really anything that's it should be in the forefront. The idea is to provide a service for your community and do it well. And I think that the rest will follow.
Good advice, indeed, from all of you. And looks like we have one more question here in the chat, actually from Gino. Looks like it's for you again, Jose. He's asking, it sounds like you've had businesses and you've run operations in different states. What are the biggest differences in running a business here in New Hampshire versus maybe Boston and New York?
That's a question for me.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is the expense. Rents in New York are like $15,000, $20,000 for a shoebox retail spot. In Boston was maybe a little bit less, but still, we're talking a lot of money. It isn't in my forefront talking numbers, because it's really the product. But I feel very lucky and blessed to be here. The community has helped me tremendously, in the sense that very little red tape to open up the business. In bigger cities, there's a lot more competition. So there's a lot of, you don't look the typical success story, or you sure you have a year's worth of, rent just in case. Whereas here, I was very fortunate to have a great landlord. I would consider him my friend. I've only known him 7-8 months, but he comes in, he checks on me, says hello. I know the mayor of Laconia, he comes in, he waves. It's just a really collaborative thing. So I feel like I'm very lucky to be able to participate in the greater community. So yeah, I think that it's a lot easier, and I say that lightly because you do need to take that step, leap of faith. But there's a lot of benefits being, small town USA. You'll have people to help you if you need to, whereas in a bigger city where I come from, you're one of a million. I live in a town that's 6,000 people. So yeah, it's a great state to really start a business. Just from getting the legal stuff taken care of, very, very easy to get around those things. And again, it's one of those things where I do feel very fortunate to be where I am and in the community that I am, and I find that's key for me. I've done it elsewhere, but those were very challenging times. Very heavy shoulders. Oh my gosh, I have to come up with this amount next month, and sales were 40% down. What do I do? But having said that, we are in a pandemic, so it's not all all perfect yet. But we're getting close. We're getting close.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly, every place has its challenges, and the pandemic certainly adds to them wherever one happens to be. So, can certainly appreciate that. So that's all we have for questions there in the chat. I'm curious, before we wrap up, Gail, Gino, do you have any closing thoughts for us this afternoon? Not that you have to.
Well, Gail, if you want to take it, you got it.
No, Gino, you go ahead. I feel like I've chat enough talking.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for being here for sure. I know these conversations are very necessary, and frankly, often they may be uncomfortable for people who've never been in these conversations. So my hat goes off to anyone who's never been in a conversation like this before, because this is what we need, is to be able to talk about these things, and hopefully everyone in here can take 1 or 2 points from this, hopefully even more than that. And, maybe something sticks and it rubs off in different friend groups or audiences or crowds you may be in, to just really spark those discussions and conversations around, what it's like to grow a business as an entrepreneur and as of color in a state that knows that diversity can increase and is making an effort to do so. So I thank everyone for being here. Thanks for the support, and and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well too, if I can help or be of assistance with anything also. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Gail. What do you have?
No, just echoing and agreeing with him. And personally, thank you, Gino, and thank you, Jose. And I maybe would not have heard your stories if it wasn't for this opportunity. So I learned a lot from you too as well. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you to you all. I think we all learned a lot today, and I think definitely some great tidbits that we can all take with us today. And what I really like about these types of events is the conversation that it inspires and the ideas that are generated. I wish we could keep going, but I know we all have work and other responsibilities to get back to this afternoon. So I will say not to worry though, that this is not the last of these types of events that Stay Work Play will convene. So be sure and be on the lookout in your inbox and on Stay Work Play social media channels for notices about other upcoming events. And you'll definitely want to keep an eye out for Stay Work Play's upcoming anti-racism series that will kick off this spring. More to come on that soon, but it's going to be a great offering of the Stay Work Play DEI series. I'll also take the opportunity as we wrap up to say that for anyone who would like to help make New Hampshire more welcoming to BIPOC communities, that I would encourage you to join Stay Work Play in our nonpartisan issues-based advocacy efforts in Concord this year. Last year, the Stay Work Play Board of Directors, and we have, by the way, a couple of board members with us today, Caitlin Woods, our co-chair, and John Green with us. The entire board voted to make diversity, equity, and inclusion a policy priority for Stay Work Play. And so this means we're taking an active role this legislative session in advocating for bills to make New Hampshire more welcoming to BIPOC communities. Things like requiring judges to receive implicit bias training and adding additional transparency and accountability on the part of law enforcement. So to learn more about these bills and how you can make your voice heard, would encourage you to visit stayworkplay.org/advocacy. To check out bills that are in the legislature this year and how you might be able to get involved. Along the same lines, I would encourage you to take part in Stay Work Play's Matters of State series, which is in which we're going around the state virtually to connect each region's legislators with their under 40 constituents. So this is a great opportunity to share the lived experiences that you and your peers have directly with your elected representatives. Last month, we had events in the Greater Concord, Greater Manchester, and Upper Valley regions. We'll be in the Lakes region tomorrow night and much of the rest of the state throughout February and March. So if you'd like to learn more about that and register for your region's event, would encourage you to visit stayworkplay.org/matters of states. And with that, would like to thank you for joining us this afternoon on behalf of the Stay Work Play team, which includes myself and my colleagues Beth Sansucci and Sarah Davis. We sure hope you enjoyed the conversation today and that it was worth your time and attention. Again, thank you to our presenters today for sharing their stories and their expertise with us today. And finally, thank you to Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, Bangor Savings Bank, and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation for their support of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. With that, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you all.